What is up, everybody? Welcome to Destination the Show, episode 75. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined, as always, by the incomparable MVP, that is Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, what's going on, man?
That's quite an intro. I appreciate that.
I'm going to try and exaggerate your intro more and more on a weekly basis between now and draft night and see how ridiculous we can get. How you doing?
I'm okay. We missed last week, so we got a lot to talk about. I feel like we should just skip through this stuff. Tell us that you're feeling better, and then we just roll, right?
Okay, let's go. Okay, housekeeping stuff first, and then we're gonna roll into some minor league stuff. So, ways that you can support the show: like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You can find all of our stuff on YouTube. Handle theirs at Destination the Show. If you want to get in touch with us, we love questions, and we got some great ones for today that we will get to if we get time. You can do that on Twitter at DTS_pod1 or on Blue Sky. The handle is at Destination the Show, or you can send us an email. Email address there is destinationtheshow@gmail.com. Made it through in record time. Okay, Jeremy, we are like 3 full weeks pretty much into all affiliates being up and running in the minor leagues. So I wanted to start with some news, and then we'll get into some standouts in the Twin system. But how about this? Let's talk Brewers first, because this time last week, the Brewers made a trade acquiring Quinn Priester from the Boston Red Sox in a trade that sent Yoferi Rodriguez, a player to be named later, and the 33rd overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft to the Boston Red Sox. What do you make of this trade? Exciting that there's a draft pick in the mix.
Well,
maybe not if you're Milwaukee.
And I mean, I saw that and I was like, wait a second, is that right? And then I text you and I was like, did the Brewers just give up 2 pieces in a trade, both being more valuable than what they got back? And your response was?
I was like a week ago. I have no idea what I texted you.
Your response was, yes, they did. Which is what I thought, right? Like, giving up a 33rd pick, giving up any draft pick that's tradable, which there aren't many.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to give up the actual pick. It's a bigger thing to give up the money that's tied to the pick, right? So there's huge value in giving that up. Then there's another big part of like giving up not that he's a top 100 prospect, right? Not that he's probably a top 200 prospect, but
I think he's definitely a top 200 prospect.
Well, then that's a problem, right? Even if he's a top, like a fringe top 10 organizational prospect, that's a lot to give up for a guy that was just moved in like a change of scenery deal not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
The player to be named later is going to be cash or nothing, right?
Yeah.
It's not super valuable, but it was like the team was very desperate to add a pitcher. Didn't just jump on the waiver wire like teams do and got something. Now, I think Priester pitched once since the trade, pitched actually pretty well.
Yeah, twice actually, I believe now.
Okay, so it's twice now. It was just one of those deals that was like, it was a desperate move and not one that you want your favorite team to make. Now, is there stuff that we don't know about Rodriguez? Probably, certainly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a long ways away. The 33rd pick, is there uncertainty with that? Obviously there is. But it's not like Priester was this slam dunk sure thing. And he could turn out to be very valuable. He could turn out to easily be the best part of this trade. It just seems like on that day the trade was made that it was an overpay by the Brewers.
Yeah. I tend to agree with that with a couple of caveats that I think you'll probably agree with, right? So agree with you in general that my reaction was like, ooh. And let's also acknowledge that, like, if anyone is going to do good work with a pitcher, and if anyone who's done good homework with a particular pitcher, they think they can shape and improve a little bit, the Brewers are probably in the top 5 organizations I would trust to like do that work. So after we get a little bit more sample size, expecting a revamped pitch mix, expecting like work on Priestess mechanics to look a little bit different, all of that good stuff. But I think the early returns, right, are just like ho hum, right? So 2 appearances so far, 2 starts, 10 innings pitched, a 0.90 ERA, but a 5.43 expected ERA. He's not striking out a ton of guys, and he's walking a lot of guys. And so let me ask you this. Is it fair to say, because I think we both agree that, like, I like this deal for the Red Sox too. Sometimes circumstances dictate that you have to have bad process for a particular outcome that you need in the short term. And that's how I kind of view this trade for the Brewers, right? Is like usually they're a team, whether it's the draft or whether it's roster construction or whatever, who we commend for having good process. In this case, I don't think this is great process, but I feel like their pitching situation kind of dictated a move like this. So I'm kind of willing to give them a one-time pass for this, as long as it's not a kind of habit type of move they make, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, but there are other players that would have been available that are similar. Yeah. It's not that Quinn Priester was this. He's not the best pitcher available, and the Cubs see one of their best starters go down, and it immediately becomes which of the best available pitchers are they going to get? Mm-hmm. To get a pitcher of this caliber, even if it's a buy low type thing, like, oh, we found this guy, or we think that we can do something with this type of player, the Brewers probably have, or should, or you may assume that there's a player in every organization like this, right? Mm-hmm. A very gettable 4A type arm where the trade value is not super high. And so if at least that's how I view this, right? Yep. So I call the Red Sox. I say, hey, what's it going to take to get Quinn Priester? If this is what they say, I say, okay, thanks.
Call you back.
And then I call any other team and find that same pitching prospect, right? Yep. And that's like, if the Twins needed to do it, if the Twins didn't have depth, it's Randy Dobnak, right? They have a guy that can come in and pitch 5 innings and be good and maybe do it every week. Every organization, not every organization, but there are a lot of players like this. And it's not that they needed a guy to take the ball every 5 days, because Quintana hadn't pitched yet for him, right? And so and they'd already pitched a bullpen game. So they've done things where it's like there's a arm that got DFA'd that you can claim, and you can throw 4 innings or however much they can give, and then you can designate them right after the game, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very common practice. So the whole thing for me was just it reeked of desperation. You know, if he turns out to be great for the Brewers, hey, excellent move, front office. But I just don't know that is the right move to make for the Brewers. And if it turns out, like I said, wonderful. I don't think that's how this plays out.
We'll happily eat crow if that works out well for the Brewers. Agree that I'm not necessarily a fan of that move, but we should revisit at the end of the season and see what kind of value they were able to pull out of Priester. Okay, let's turn our attention to some minor league ball. Jeremy, before we jump into guys, have you been able to catch much minor league action so far this season? I feel like you're still in the throes of like Timberwolves and all the other million things you have going on.
Yeah, I've made it a point to watch the Connor Prelip starts.
Yeah, there you go.
But the MLB, I have MLB TV on a Roku and on a Samsung TV, and they don't work the way that I would like them to work, right? Where you click on a game and it just like goes live. It's been kind of frustrating. So I've watched a couple of Saints games. I want to say it was the first Zebby start. I feel like I watched a little bit of a Soto start. Haven't watched a ton aside from the pre-lip things, but also the one TV I watch it on, it's like it zooms funny. So if there is a radar gun, it cuts that out. So I don't even get to see that, which makes viewing difficult. But yeah, even with that, there have been some pretty impressive pitching performances.
Yep.
In only a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dig into some of those a little bit. Hard to escape our attention here. We'll start with the AAA guys, Zebby Matthews and Andrew Morris, and I'm bucketing them together a little bit. So we'll start with Zebby quick. We talked last week, or the last time we recorded, Jeremy, about like, do you read much into gains in velocity? And one of the kind of discussion points we had was, let's wait a couple starts and see how this plays out in the regular season. Well, Zebby Matthews is through 3 starts now. He's striking out 36.4% of batters, walking just 3.6%, which is ridiculous. If we take a look at his start yesterday, check out his fastest pitch by inning. First inning, 95.9. Taking it easy. Second inning, 98.1. Third inning, 97.6. Fourth inning, 97.9. Fifth inning, fastest pitch, 99.5 mile per hour fastball. Hard to not get pretty excited about this at this point. Wouldn't you say? Pretty much every pitch he has is at least 2 ticks up from 2024, and he's knocking pretty loudly on the door at the moment.
Yeah, and that's like when you see upticks in velocity, it might be like a first inning thing. To see it held on, that's where things change. And it was interesting because he's walked guys, and so like at first I was like, man, he's walking people. But if you can get people to chase some stuff out of the zone, if you become more than just a guy that throws strikes, like that changes your whole kind of perception of what he is. Like now he's a power guy, so you could walk some guys, right? Yep. A little surprised that he didn't get the first crack because it lined up, but I think that, for better or worse, that's just what the Twins did.
What's your theory there? Because Festa has looked great in both of his first two starts with the Twins. Admittedly, like they've kept him pretty tightly on like you're not going through the order the first time, which I think is like to his benefit because he had one good start at AAA and one bad one. What's your best guess as to why Festa was the decision and keep Zebby in AAA for now?
I think just because Festa was better last year. Right, and just kind of was lined up first. Probably was clear. I would guess something like that was probably made clear to both of them coming out of the spring, and it did make sense to try to give guys an extra day off, and I don't have any. I mean, if that's how they're going to do it, I think at any time Matthews could come up and fill a role as well as other guys. But I do think that it was probably based on the entire body of work, and they didn't have to manipulate much to get Festa up, and it made sense. He did it longer for last year, and if we were drawing out that pecking order, I think it makes sense to have him at 6, and then to give him that first opportunity.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Morris for a second, because I got to tell you, dude, I texted you in the middle of the day today, and I was legit surprised to see this. Andrew Morris starting today against the Iowa Cubs. And also, to be clear, like he got hit pretty hard. That's a really tough lineup. You're talking about Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara. I mean, just that lineup is absolutely stacked with guys. He hit 99.3 on his fastball twice today, surpassed 98 miles per hour on 5 additional pitches. That is an absolutely new gear from Morris. What are your thoughts there? Were you surprised to get that text? Because I was blown away when I saw that, honestly.
I was, but I like to poo-poo all of your excitement.
You do.
And my response was, dude, everybody throws 100. And so, yeah, I was surprised, but at the same time, for the Twins to find extra velo guys, that's not surprising.
I agree,
right?
but
how do you use
agreed.
This velocity?
Agreed. I guess here's the specific thing I find surprising. I think it's now like the scope of the additional velo they're finding over time that I find surprising, because we'll take Morris as an example. His last start, his top's fastball before today was 96.8. This is not a big frame dude. He's like 6 feet, I don't know, 190 pounds. Zebby is a little bit different because he's a larger dude. I don't know, 6'4", 6'5", whatever. But we're now talking about two guys who have added like 7 ticks to their fastball since college. And I guess my expectation, and maybe you disagree, so just like correct me if you feel differently, but my thought process is always like, oh, the Twins can add velo. Maybe we're looking at like 2 to 4 miles per hour. But like 7 is across like multiple guys just seems a little outlandish, honestly.
So it's a thing they do, though.
It is a thing they do.
Right. And that's the thing. Like if they did it one time, it would be like, wow, this is part luck, part what they do. But when they're doing it with everybody, except for the guy that I really thought they would just add a bunch of velo to, right? I mean, that is it a surprise anymore? Like I feel like it's just what's expected. So it's more of a surprise when it's not happening, which makes it kind of weird.
Speaking of guys that throw hard, we'll touch on a couple more guys here and also one hitter. We talked last time we recorded about some of their guys in the lower minors, right? And we kind of talked about expectations and what denotes a successful season for guys. And where we landed was like throw strikes, stay healthy, show some ability to miss bats. Charlee Soto, newly minted at high A, 19 years old, 2 starts so far. He's thrown 9 innings, striking out 34.4% of hitters. Walk rate is right around where it was last year. The strikes can come and go a little bit. Also touched 100 in his first start of the season. So I know you caught a little bit, I think, of that first one. What are your thoughts on Soto so far?
Let's see how long you keep it up, right? You've been a big fan. I know that there's been some publications out there that have had him either right at the very, very end of the top 100 or very, very close. And I think the thing that you're buying with him is a super high ceiling. Glenn Perkins was talking on the radio yesterday.
Okay.
Just happened to catch a little bit of the game on the radio. And he's like, man, he just looks the part. And he does. And there's a lot of guys that look the part that never crack a rotation ever. But if he can keep up that trajectory, like he's the type of guy that you look at and you say he can start the first playoff game. And there's a lot of ways to climb there, but that's the ceiling that he has. What's the floor, right? Is there a reliever floor? Yes, there certainly is.
For sure.
Is it like high leverage reliever? Potentially. Could he get by on what he has and be at a minimum a middle reliever? Yeah, probably that too. And so right now there's a lot of outcomes, but whenever an outcome can be a top of the rotation starter, you gotta enjoy that. And to show any semblance of that at this level is a maybe not a really big deal yet, but could be a really big deal very, very soon.
Yep. Also noteworthy, I think, that Charlee Soto is tied to be the youngest pitcher in all of high A across any org in the majors currently, with an A's prospect named Steven Echeverria. Last pitcher I want to touch base on, Jeremy, Dasan Hill. We did talk about him a couple episodes ago. He has made 2 appearances for Fort Myers, started 2 games, really, really short. Small sample size, right? Because we mentioned this, I think, when we last recorded. They were going to keep him on relatively short starts. 7.1 innings pitched. He's striking out close to 16 batters per 9 at the moment. I've watched like 80% of Hill's starts. Fastball's been up to like 97, 98. And the slider, no one in low A is going to touch that pitch. It's nasty. And he looks the part too so far through the early goings. Exactly what you want to see, I think.
Yeah. The thing that'll be interesting is when you've had guys, and I think you can lump him into the Marco Raya, Charlee Soto, like the kid glove type development. Neither of them have like dominated they've had their lumps. And so if Hill dominates for half a year, does this change? I don't think it changes we're going to limit the innings, we're going to limit the pitches. But do you say, well, let's expose him to a higher level? Because Soto pitched all year last year at Fort Myers.
Yep.
Marco Raya pitched like 7 years before getting it promoted, or at least that's how it felt like. Could Hill be the rare case where it's like, okay, now let's move them, because the high school guys haven't, right? College guys,
yeah,
they get put at a level that's too low, they fly through things. The high school guys, it's all been like, wait a second,
you got like a full season. Yeah,
even Dylan Quested, who came out and had that really good start, he pitched very sparingly for a full year. What's going to happen when a prep guy comes in and forces the Twins' hand?
Yeah.
Like it's obviously way too early to even have that conversation, but it's a fun thought to have.
For sure. Absolutely. Jeremy, one last guy I want to touch on the Twin system, and you're going to enjoy this, I know, because it will enable you to feel smug, which you love doing. We've talked mostly about pitchers so far. We should also talk about a notable bat. Billy Amick is making light work, I think the young people would say, of high A Cedar Rapids so far, entering play tonight through 10 games. Obviously, that is a very small sample size, hitting .417, .551, .611 for an OPS well over 1,000, walking 20% of the time, which feels interesting because he never walked in college, and the strikeout rate a very manageable 22.4% of the time. If I'm recall, that's good for 227 WRC plus, by the way. So that's 127% better than an average hitter at high A. If I remember asking you about Amick so far, I believe your prediction was he's going to crush high A and make it look silly easy, something along those lines. What do you make of that start?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like you go from playing in the highest level in college and having question marks, but this is not harder baseball, right? I think it's very similar to what he saw, very similar to what he did. Obviously, there's a transition to wood bats, but this isn't about like, yeah, I told you how it's going to work. No, this is not at all surprising, because this is how it should work, right? If it was not this, that would be very, very concerning. If he keeps doing it, and he needs to get promoted, but that was my thing all along. Like, when he gets to AA, that's when he's going to meet resistance, because that's going to be a higher level than he's ever played at.
Yep.
If he continues to rake at AA in the second half of the year, if he makes it, if the Twins, if they decide to do that with him, then let's talk about him as a prospect. But I think doing that right now is a little early, just because we saw what he did in college. The walk things that's a fun new thing, right? Because that's an approach thing, a play discipline thing, where you don't typically have that giant change. And maybe you would argue the last guy that we've seen do that had a meteoric rise. And so I'm not ready to put him there yet, but I do think, Billy Amick at this level was not going to be an issue for him. And now let's see what happens as this year progresses.
Yep. While we're on the Cedar Rapids roster, we'll quickly get a question here that Chris sent in. He said, where has Kalen Culpepper been? Notice he's out of the lineup again. Is he injured? Kalen Culpepper is injured, unfortunately, at the moment. He has had a really interrupted start to a season. He had a hamstring strain in spring training, currently on the 7-day IL at Cedar Rapids with a wrist sprain. Don't have a timetable, but that's a bummer. No Kalen Culpepper, no Walker Jenkins currently at AA Wichita. All right, Jeremy, are you ready to draft, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little worried after you told me what did you just say you would dominate me, or was it more graphic than that?
Okay, let's I'm gonna backtrack from my position. Let's talk about let's quickly review last year, because this is not the first time we've done this, and I actually took the time to go back and listen to what we came up with last time, just to kind of refresh our memories. So what we're going to do is a alternating picks through through like 16 picks, I believe, with guys that are eligible for the 2025 draft. And this is not a like which organization is going to take which guy thing. It's going to be Jeremy and Jamie alternating to try and arrive at which picks they like the most, essentially to form the strongest possible team, right? And so last year we had certain rules in place, which was in a very, very strong college crop, or at least at the time, you had to take at least one prep player and you had to take at least one pitcher. I have amended the rules slightly this year.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Because you got to keep a sharp draft mind like yourself on your toes. This year, you have to take 2 prep players minimum. And I think that's just in response to how the board is shaking out. But just to recap our respective classes from 2024, your team, and then I'm going to ask you for how you feel about your team and how you feel about them comparatively. Your team was Charlie Condon, Jack Caglione, Hagen Smith, Braden Montgomery, Vance Honeycutt, Tommy White, Caleb Bonnemer was the one prep player you selected, and then Brody Brecht, the power right-handed pitcher out of Iowa. My team was Travis Bazana, JJ Weatherholt, Nick Kurtz, Connor Griffin, Chase Burns, Trey Savage, Seaver King, and Bryce Rayner. So 2 preps for me being the only major difference. What do you make of your team kind of 1 year down the line now that we kind of saw how and where everyone was picked?
Well, let's start by saying afterwards, we both like my team better.
That is true. That is true.
I think it's very, very easy at this point to say that we both like your team better.
Say that again. Sure.
Now you can re-listen to if you need to. Yeah, your team, like I still, I mean, Braden Montgomery got hurt, right? It's hurt and traded. Caglianone's been fun. Mm-hmm. Condon's been not great. Hagen Smith will be fine. My last 3 questionable, right? Honeycutt I think is going to be okay. Bazana's been real good. Weatherholt couldn't touch Connor Prelip. So
hey, that's not fair for a lefty batter. No one can touch Connor Prelip.
Nick Kurtz is actually, I wasn't a big Nick Kurtz guy.
Kurtz has been a monster.
Yeah, he has been. Chase Burns may be the best pitcher in the minors. And your prep guys have been, I mean, they both like flew up boards. So I mean, 1 year later, your team looks better than mine. So
too early.
But it is too early. So let's talk about this one. Because it's a way different feeling, right? It's a way different just looking. And so you have your board, you have your consensus board. I'm looking at just kind of perusing at 2 different boards. One board has guys in the top 5 where the other board doesn't have them in the first round.
It's such a mess.
And so there's really, I mean, we're going to take 16 guys. There's a decent chance that we're going to take guys that are not first round. There's other chances that we're not going to take guys that become like top 3 picks potentially. Yeah. And so this one will be way more fun to look at in a year because it's going to be an absolute disaster. Yeah. I don't feel good about anything after the first pick.
That's funny. And I mean, that's a great summary. I agree with you. This is a complete cluster. And I think this is a good way to illustrate how much of a mess, especially the top of the first round is. Like, I just would not like to be picking in the top 5 or 6 this year just because, I just don't feel that convicted on that many guys. Whereas if you get into the like 8 to 16 range, then there starts to be kind of value fits that I like a lot more. So excited to dig into this and listen to this again this time next year. And I guarantee there's like at least 2 picks we each make that probably make us look foolish a year from now, but that's half the fun of doing it.
If I only make 2 picks that make me look foolish, that's a win, because I had 3 last year that weren't great, and it was a stronger draft.
It's a tough thought exercise this year for sure. Okay, so this time last year, I actually went first. I took Bazana first as a kind of safety net type pick. So we'll just switch draft order for the sake of fairness. So you are on the board first. Who you taking number 1, and what's your rationale?
I'm taking Ethan Holiday because he is number 1 on my board, and I feel good about that right now. Obvious question marks. Is he going to be a shortstop? Probably not. He's different than his brother, but I do feel good about the fact that right now, and even 2 months from now, he's going to hear his name called somewhere in the top 3, 4 picks.
Yep.
So I'm going to take him as one of 2 preps, even though I will take more than 2 preps.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, makes a ton of sense like that. I do feel convicted, similarly to you, Jeremy, that like Holiday feels like a lock for a top 5 spot. He's currently number 4 on the consensus board. You can find it at Twins Daily and all the other sites. I agree with you. I feel like I'm going to end up taking a decent amount of preps here, but not with my first pick because I'm going college pitcher, and I'm going to take Jamie Arnold. He is one of the players I feel most convicted about in this class. He's actually risen to the top of the consensus board, and I want to be clear, like personally, if we're stacking up against last year, I think I like Hagen Smith and Chase Burns more than Jamie Arnold, both of them. But Arnold has a ton to like. It's a really difficult look, especially for left-handers. It's a good fastball. Maybe the command of that pitch has taken a little bit of a step back this year. It's a nasty sweeper. He's added a split change to the mix this year, work to drive line, good extension. There's just like a ton of traits to like. I think this is both like a high floored profile where at worst you have like a back end starter type, but I can also see a world in which a good pitching, an organization that's good at developing pitching really helps him take a step forward. And you have kind of like a, solid number 2 type or a guy who you might feel confident starting a playoff game. So I'll take Jamie Arnold, cover my pitching bucket early, and back to you for the third pick.
That would have been my pick at 2 had you picked not him at 1. So I think kind of on the same page here. This is where things get different for me.
Go.
Right? So, and this probably doesn't come as a surprise for you because you kind of called this 2 weeks ago. We talked about it. A guy that you said this is going to be your favorite guy. At least mention of the fact that it's never happened before. Prep righty's never gone number 1 overall.
Let's go.
Is the chance that a prep pitcher from California named Seth Hernandez is going to be that guy? Probably not. But will he likely be the first prep pitcher off the board in the top 5? Likely. Again, we talked about ceiling. This guy has the right frame. And so that to me is an easy one, even though he's number 7 on your board right now and as low as in the 20s on some boards. Seth Hernandez for me, another prep and my first pitcher.
I love that, Jeremy, and you're actually foreshadowing moves and updates to the board because a bunch more draft rankings came out this week. Seth Hernandez is up to 5, so he is moving in the direction you want him to. Been up to 100, struck out 11, I want to say, in a complete game effort at NHSI in the last week, which is a big USA Baseball high school tournament in North Carolina. I like that pick a ton. He's another name who I would feel fairly convicted is going to go in the top 5 as well. So I think that's a great pick. I'm on board with all of these so far. I am going to pivot away from college and go prep. I'm going to dig into the prep hitting class here, and I'm going to both surprise you and annoy you because I'm going to take Eli Willits. I'm going to take Eli Willits. And to be clear, there's another prep hitter who is ranked a little bit above him, who I'm sure will feature somewhere in this draft. Eli Willits switch hitting shortstop out of Oklahoma who reclassified from 2026 to this class. He's going to be 17 on draft day. You brought him up first, so let me give you a little bit of shine here. You brought him up as hey, this is a really interesting profile. And at first I was like, I don't know if anything about his profile kind of wows, but actually everything is just solid good. And he's so young that it gives a lot of confidence that everything's going to take a step forward and develop. And so I kind of see the, kind of the floor here is just hopefully a solid, let's put it this way. The 50th percentile outcome, hopefully is just a solid MLB regular who sticks on the dirt somewhere with a hit over power profile. That feels really solid here. So I'm taking Eli Willits at 4.
So I had Willits at 4 on my board.
Okay.
With the caveat that I was not taking him.
Oh.
I was going to make sure that you took him. I just didn't think you'd do it so soon.
There you go.
And so that's great. I'm going to go away from prep. So 2 prep guys. Okay. I'm going to go to the college hitter ranks to a guy that is kind of polarizing, and that's Texas A&M outfielder Jace Lavalette, who you have on your last published board number 6. And I do think the questions are real, right? But I took Vance Honeycutt with the same questions, right? Throw strikes, miss strikes, but does damage, has been a little bit better lately, or at least last I looked, he had been a little bit better. I do think there's a chance that he's answers some of these questions and goes very high. And even if he drops, there's still the right profile that he's going to be, at least in my opinion, a solid major leaguer. So is he going to be the first pick in the draft? Probably not. But if he drops, is he going to make some team happy? I think there's a very good chance of that. So Jace Lavalette, probably corner outfielder, corner hit, power outfield, Texas A&M.
Yep. And there's certainly so much to like in his profile, right? And I think we've talked about this before, and it's worth bringing up again. Sometimes it feels like there's a little bit of a overcorrection with certain guys to how they're doing, right? Laviolette has rounded into better hitting form in recent weeks. He's still hitting below 300, which I think is a little bit kind of unusual for a top guy in the college ranks. But sometimes there's a little bit of an overcorrection to guys. And you mentioned this, the other week, he's probably still going to be a high pick. There's a lot of good tools here. He's a good athlete. He has absolutely massive raw power. I think the swing and miss is the one outstanding question mark from him. Does not chase a ton. I am going to, with my 3rd pick, I'm sticking prep all the way. And I'm going to take Billy Carlson. In my opinion, the best defensive shortstop in this draft class. High school teammates with Seth Hernandez. That would be the first pair of high school teammates ever to be drafted in the top 10. Carlson's been up to 97 on the mound, which gives you an idea what the arm looks like. Really silky smooth shortstop. Really good bat speed. That while he doesn't have a ton of in-game power at the moment, he's kind of projectable, slender guy. He's 6'1", 170, 175. I think there's more on the way there. So I'll take Carlson. I've been a fan of that profile since the jump, and that's for me, that's 2 of my favorite prep profiles locked up in the early rounds.
I'm gonna do something different here. I'm gonna go down the board a little bit. I'm curious where this guy fits currently with some updates. Okay. We've seen over the course of the last handful of years where you have your top pitcher, and then guys just kind of start showing up and doing things. So on the last update right now at 24 is Liam Doyle, pitcher at Tennessee, a transfer from Ole Miss. Wasn't great. I think it was Ole Miss. Anyway, wasn't great early. There are some reliever concerns, but in a draft where I'm not certain about who the second best college pitcher is, there are some people out there that believe that Doyle might be the best college pitcher. And so fastball that is going to grade extremely high. At Tennessee right now, we've seen some really good pitchers come from that school. So I'm going Liam Doyle, and I don't know how high he climbs the board. I would guess we're going to see his name called pretty early, earlier than the 24th that he's on the last publish. Where do you have him on your current board?
He's up to 17 already, so he's already jumped 7 spots since. That's only a week, dude. And there's been 2 fairly major national boards update in the last week, so already up 7 spots. And I think you are capturing something kind of before the real rush happens with shoving him up the board. So that makes a ton of sense.
I was also worried you were going to snipe him.
I definitely under consideration, and let's just like take stock for a second, right? Because I'm at like my 4th pick, and I'm now in like I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do mode. All of the top. You know what I'm gonna do? I think. I am gonna go down board a little more later, but I'm gonna stick with the first prospect I wrote up for this class. I think with my 4th pick, and I'm gonna go Iva Arquette, shortstop who transferred from Washington to Oregon State, has had like a good 2025, but not spectacular. But it's just like a big league frame. He's like 6'5", 220, superb athlete, absolutely legit, plus power. He's convinced me that he's got enough to stick at shortstop, at least in the medium term here this season. He's played the position well. Definitely some questions about the hit tool, but Arquette is a guy who I've liked in a class where there aren't a bunch of very certain college bat profiles for me. So I think he both checks the box of getting a player I like and maybe giving you more of a challenge with taking college bat profiles that you like. So that's me.
I'm going to go back to a college bat profile.
Okay.
And I'm going with Brendan Summerhill, Arizona outfielder, lefty. I think he's out right now with an injury.
He is.
But another one of those, he's going to fit the demographic that there's not a ton of. Likely to be an easier sign, likely to be a faster mover. So maybe a top 5 to 10 pick at this point. I'm not sure where you have him on the most recent update. I'm guessing he's right around 10. And that's going to be my 2nd college bat. And we're back to you.
I like that pick. I like Summerhill a ton. I think the one question, or there's really 2 questions that he came into the season with. One is like, what does the center field defense look like? Because if you're confident he can stick in center field, that changes the offensive value proposition quite a bit. And then second is, can he tap into a little bit more in-game power? And he's hit really well before the injury, but he really hasn't tapped into a lot more in-game power in terms of home run power. He has a ton of triples. I think when he went down, he was like leading the country in triples or leading D1 in triples. But that's kind of the remaining half question. Having said all that, I love Summerhill's profile. I think he occupies like a really nice space of like good hit potential, good power, and just like solid average tools across the board. He's currently number 12. The thing I would say for him as kind of an asset is he's been in that range consistently the entire time, has not budged. He's moved up and down like 1 or 2 spots at a time, but really hasn't deviated much from where he was. Okay, I am going to take another pitcher. I'm going to take another college pitcher, actually. And I'm going to take the guy who I most prefer as college right-handed pitcher 2 in this class for me. And that's Kyson Witherspoon, right-handed pitcher out of Oklahoma. It's going to be 20 on draft day, so he has the youth advantage because he was a JC transfer at some point. Fastball is really loud. You can crank that up to 100. Really nasty power sliders to go with that. He's just been shoving in the SEC, consistently performing all season, 6'2", 210, right-hander. Just a really solid, consistent track record, and I think again an organization that develops pitching well can do some things to enhance his arsenal and really make him into a solid middle of the rotation guy. So I'll take Kyson Witherspoon as my next pick.
I'm going to go back to what I've been doing. I'm going to take another college hitter. This time it's going to be Merrick Houston, shortstop, Wake Forest, showing some power, hit well in the Cape, can play defense, really checks all the boxes. And when you're looking for, again, a demographic that's not super deep, this is an answer that I think is going to be easy for a team to make in the top 10. Consensus board probably has him in the top 10. Where is he right now?
So you've taken the highest remaining player. He is all the way up to 7 at the board I'm looking at right now.
Okay. 10 homers this year, or had 10 homers in the first 34 games. More home runs than he had last year, and has the chops to stick defensively. Love guys from Wake, and it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But certainly someone that I think goes in the top 10 when all is said and done.
Love that pick for you. Okay, so you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've had 5. We'll do one more pick, and then we'll do a quick recap of where we stand with 2 picks remaining each. I am really stuck. I'm really stuck on different guys at the moment. I'm going to go, I think, down board for my remaining 3 picks. Okay, so for my 6th pick, I'm going to take a college hitter who is a shortstop, another guy who's convinced me that he can stick at shortstop for the medium term this year, and that is Wahiva Aloy, who is shortstop for Arkansas, native of Hawaii. Has just like vastly better at short this year. You can go check out some of his defensive highlights. Massive power, just crushing in the SEC this year. He's been a little bit of a riser, but certainly not anything outlandish. I currently have him 20th on the board. He's just a personal cheeseball favorite, someone who I really enjoy to watch play, and I think has a little bit better of an all-round offensive skill set than he's given credit for. I think the perception is he's dinged a little bit for a hit tool and some swing and miss, but in general, he's hitting pretty well in addition to the plus power. So Wahiva Aloy for me with my 6th pick.
So when I started writing some names down, I had pretty much 4 dudes lumped together in the potential shortstops from the prep demographic, not including Ethan Holiday, right? I figured he'll be third base. You've taken 3 of the guys.
Okay.
I thought you might spread that out, and I would get 2 and you would get 2, but that's not how this worked. The last guy remaining, I think, is for me definitely the 4th of 4, because he's older, because he's smaller, all the reasons that he is still available, probably, but still, I think this demographic flies off the board when the draft comes around. So, in trying to get ahead of that a little bit, I'm going to take Kason Cunningham, prep shortstop for now from Texas. He's going to hit, right? So, it's like the Termarr Johnson type, where is he a shortstop? Termarr Johnson never was. If Kason Cunningham is a second baseman, I think that's okay. And he's older, and so that lends itself to some maybe dropping of some boards, especially on one like my own. Like, that's why I prefer Willits, right? But when you have a player of this caliber, and I got him with my 7th pick, even though we were going to recap after 6.
I forgot.
I'll take Cunningham with my next to last pick.
So you've, with your most recent 2 picks, you have taken the 2 highest rated remaining players on the board currently. So you took Merrick Houston, who's 7, and Kason Cunningham, who's 8. So now there's only 1 player inside the consensus top 10 who's dropping precipitously, by the way, who has not been picked, and I don't know that he will be. We'll see. I'm really stuck. I'm really feeling pretty stuck on where to go next.
Well, I'll fill your time while you think by telling you that I had 11 guys starred that I like, my top 11. Like,
okay.
I don't know what I'll do after these 11 are gone, so I figured I would get 6 of them, and I got 7. So I feel pretty good about that right now. Obviously, like I said, so much can change, and maybe I reach for Seth Hernandez.
No, I think that's fair.
I did okay with my 7. With this next one, who knows?
Okay. I know thank you for filling time for me. I figured out what I'm going to do. I'm going back to the prep ranks, and I am taking not a shortstop. And so he's going to have to mash. But I'm taking probably a third base prospect out of California named Gavin Feen. He has been a little bit of a riser through the spring, really kind of physical profile, committed to Texas, 6'3", 200, had a really good summer showcase circuit, a little bit like unorthodox in the batter's box. It's kind of a lot going on with the swing. But he has potentially a great hit power combo. Everything else with him is much more like kind of average. This is not like a plus defender. It's probably an average arm. It's average foot speed. And so he's going to have to hit. I'm just making a bet that Gavin Feen is going to figure it out and put it all together, whether that's at third base or in the outfield. So he'll be my 7th pick. Real quick recap, because I forgot to do it after 6. So we've each had 7 picks, 1 more each. Your squad shaping up so far, you've got Ethan Holiday, Seth Hernandez, Jace Laviolette, Liam Doyle, Brendan Summerhill, Merrick Houston, and Kason Cunningham. My team, Jamie Arnold, Eli Willits, Billy Carlson, Iva Arquette, Kyson Witherspoon, Wahiva Aloy, and Gavin Feen. You got 1 more pick, Jeremy. Where are you going to go?
So this is tough for me because I'm the same demographic, which is prep pitchers, which is my favorite one, right? When it comes down to it, downboard, there's a lot of variety, right?
Absolutely.
So the 2 guys that I'm down to, one is the hardest throwing lefty prep ever.
That's so fun. That's so fun.
In Jack Bauer. And I was like, yep, I'm going to go there. But I instead am going to go with the 6'8" Crew Schoolcraft because he's 6'8". He's got a sweet name. And when you have 6'8", there's just so much you can, like, there's levers and there's uncertainty. But I think when you're 6'8", it just inherently comes with a high ceiling, right? And so I'm going to take Crew Schoolcraft, and we'll see what happens. But, shoot your shot with number 8, and I hope it turns out okay.
Yeah, make a fun pick at number 8. I like that. You know something weird about this draft class? Crew Schoolcraft is not the only 6'8" left-handed starter in this class, which is awesome.
I did not know.
The other one is a softer throwing guy from Michigan State. But yes, Schoolcraft 6'8" lefty, up to 98 with a fastball, nasty slider. Going to be really interesting. I think he's committed to Oregon State. We'll see. That's an interesting one. Okay, I'm going to go really down board for my last pick to. Okay, I'm going to 47th. I'm going to 47th on the consensus board because the last pick should be fun, and I have to put my money where my mouth is. I said that Corbin Dickerson was going to be a first-round draft pick, and so I got to take him. Corbin Dickerson was drafted by the Twins in 2022, obviously did not sign, went to Louisville, transferred to Indiana, and he's putting up crazy numbers at Indiana. It is both hit and power, but it's a little more power than hit. It's like top of the scale power, though. Max exit velo this season of 117. That's for a 6 foot, 205-pound guy. He's a really great athlete. He plays a good center field defense. So that's part of the appeal for me. Runs well, all of that good stuff. He's obviously way down board at the moment. I still personally think folks in their rankings are kind of catching up on him. So I'm making a bet that he at least makes it into the top 30 by the time we get to July. So you can, on July 1st, you can text me and say, where's Corbin Dickerson? And if he's still outside the top 30, I did a bad job of prognosticating because he's currently 47th, but I think he'll be a top 30 guy by the time the draft rolls around.
I actually very much wondered at the onset of this, will Jamie take Corbin Dickerson? I thought the answer was no. I really did. I thought the answer was going to be no.
I thought about it because I think there's probably guys that are safer picks for that spot, but I got to back up my takes. So don't mind being wrong, but I'm going to be convicted in being wrong. Okay, quick recap of the teams. Jeremy, third baseman, I'm going to call him third baseman, Ethan Holiday. Right-handed pitcher, Seth Hernandez. Outfielder, Jace Laviolette. Left-handed pitcher, Liam Doyle. Outfielder, Brendan Summerhill. Shortstop, Merrick Houston. Infielder, Kason Cunningham. Left-handed pitcher, Cruz Schoolcraft. My team, left-handed pitcher, Jamie Arnold. Shortstops, Eli Willardson, Billy Carlson, and Iva Arquette. Right-handed pitcher, Kyson Witherspoon. Shortstop, Wahiva Aloy. Third baseman, Gavin Bean. And outfielder, Corbin Dickerson. To be continued in April 2026, my friend.
That's right.
That was fun. Okay, we're going to finish up here with a listener question. I don't know if you want to take this one because I definitely didn't prep you to it, but Dwight sent us an email and said, and it's very adroit to today's conversation. He said, we continue to hear the Twins are increasing velocity, improving pitch selection. That first part is absolutely inarguable. My question is, who are the people in the organization that are doing this? Is there a minor league pitching czar? I love that question because I enjoy the idea that there is one person responsible for all of the velo improvements happening among Twins prospects. I mean, I think the simple answer would be this is a what's the right word? Kind of institutional set of practices that the organization follows, right? In terms of they have a velocity camp after guys turn pro at the beginning of the season where they look to add velo through weighted ball programs and stuff like that. They obviously have guys who have an established track record of success at accomplishing that, both at kind of the organizational leadership level and working with pitchers on a day-to-day basis. And so please weigh in, but I guess my answer would be it is a set of systems and structures that lead to consistently adding velo for guys who they draft.
Right. And the funny thing about all of this is that when Derek Falvey came over, the talk was all about how Derek Falvey is this pitching guru.
Yeah.
Right. And then there weren't pitchers right away, immediately. There weren't pitchers immediately, and people were like, what the heck? Is Derek Falvey even know what he's doing? And what Derek Falvey does an excellent job doing is putting these systems and the people in the right place. And so that, and I mean, and it's organizationally, it's organizational wide, right? So what Sean has the scouts doing, what they're looking for, things that they're doing. You have Rep Soto stuff and other video type things and analytic type things where you're looking for stuff, and just seeing certain things and altering grip slightly, right? Adding new pitches, ditching things that aren't working. And I think that's kind of the part of it, right? Is before it was all trusting what you saw and saying, okay, yeah, we can do that. And now it's more, what are these numbers showing us, right? How is the ball spinning? How is the ball moving? And can we add to that? Can we ditch that? But I'd assume this team of people is significant, right? Dozens, right? At least a couple dozen people that have their mitts on things. And yeah, Falvey is at the top, but there's probably a handful of people that do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yep.
Right. But then working collaboratively, right? That was your buzzword in 2020 in the 2020s. Just collaborative work to get what we're getting. And that, circle back to saying 7 miles an hour, right? That's not the work of one person. That's the work of a lot of people with a lot of things. And that's why we see it pretty consistently. The results maybe haven't been there at the major league level as a team, but when your guys are getting poached by other organizations, it's because you're doing something right. And yeah, you're not going to credit one person more than anybody. There's going to be a lot of people that are gone and then replaced because the ideas are all there as an organizational thing. But once they spread out enough, then other teams start to do the same thing, and you kind of have to look for that market,
the next edge.
Yeah, what's it going to be? So they've done great, and we've seen it. We've seen it start to pay off, at least with having 8 or 9 starters ready to go, and having more guys queued up.
Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way real quick. And there is one other, I think, like org role that probably people are less familiar with is pitching coordinator. So you have 2 pitching coaches per affiliate, 1 Spanish-speaking pitching coach, and a second pitching coach. You have pitching coordinators are the guys who are designing throwing programs for the organization and for individual guys' use. But let's finish on this note. If you had told Jeremy in 2015, 10 years ago, before Falvey took over, Falvey and Company, that in 2025 the Twins would have 2 AAA starters throwing fastballs at 99 miles per hour, would you have believed your future self? Because I don't think that I would, honestly.
If I would have believed it, it wouldn't have been like the rest of what's actually happening. I wouldn't have believed. You know what I mean? Like that 10 years ago, there could have been a couple hard throwers in the system.
Mm-hmm.
But if you would have said, but also in the majors, they got relief pitchers throwing 103. They got other guys that touch 100. They got guys just waiting in the wings. I wouldn't have believed all of that. And that's the thing. Like it's systematically, it's all just kind of been overturned to the point where now it's like we just expect it, and we do, because we expect this draft class, this past draft class, and this next draft class to just have 5 major league ready starters in 3 years.
Yep.
Which is not 100%. Which is unfair.
It is. It is unfair. 2022 has spoiled us. We will call it a day for today. Dude, this was fun to get back to talking ball. We will be back in a week, talking more minor league ball, and I think tentatively we're going to preview. There's one of 2 directions depending on MLB scheduling. We're either going to talk about some guys who are rising up draft boards, or we might have bonus pool allocations be released between this week and next week, because tis the time of year, and if so, we can dig into who's got the money and who's got the picks.
Do we get an Manuel Rodriguez MLB debut between now and then?
No way. I would be absolutely shocked. No, I don't think so.
I'm going to chime in for that one just for the end. I cannot be seen, but I am here. It's more likely Carson McCusker gets added to the 40-man before we see Erod rush to the majors.
There you go. There you have it. We'll check.
Hey, remember when I talked about McCusker being a non-top 30 prospect that's going to impact the...
Yeah. You say a lot of smart things, Jeremy. No, McCusker is mashing. Great story. Perhaps we'll come back we need to highlight more guys, because Darren Bowen's been absolutely shoving it AA so far. There's a lot of very interesting performances so far in the system. So we'll come back and cover all of that next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until then, enjoy the baseball. We'll see you soon.